saw the movie called UNSANE. Talk about crazy. That is a really crazy film with Claire Foy. I was not expecting to be like, you know, emotionally disturbed by such a film. But this was really just, really weird way disturbing. And and I don't know how to describe it because there's so much to it. But for my fellow Christians, I'll do my best to give a review and some suggestions of how to pray the movies. And first of all, it begins with this girl. And now I'm having a hard time remembering how it even began, but this girl in the movies, not in the movies, but she's just like she's in a new job. And she does some kind of data interpretation or something like that. And her boss, she's got a boss there. It's in Pennsylvania. Her boss is happy with her work. And then there's a little bit of kind of a revelation that she's been a victim of stalking. But you're not sure if it's real or if it's part of her imagination. It's not obvious yet. And so she's troubled by this. Apparently that's what caused her to move away from her mom, who's in Boston. So she moves from Boston to Pennsylvania. And she calls her mom. She hasn't told her mom why she left yet, though. And it's not clear what happened to her when she was there. And later they show that she had volunteered at some kind of hospice, and for elderly who are dying near death. And she would read to this elderly man while her adult son, sat in the room or stood by. Apparently, her adult son, named David, would never say anything. Just watched and listened to the girl read to the elderly man in the wheelchair, who was apparently non-responsive. And this man, the young man, is the son, young adult, not so young, maybe middle age actually. Apparently fell in love with the girl while she was doing that, and ever since then he started sending her notes and flowers and phone calls and text messages, and she finally got an order, like a restraining order, and apparently didn't do much good. So she just left. She left, and that's why she moved. She got a new job, but she still thinks she sees them around and about, on a daily basis, and she's wondering if it's her imagination or if it's real. So she goes to see a counselor at a nearby place, like one of those for-profit psychiatric places. And she talks to a lady and tells the lady she's just been troubled, and she's just expecting it to be like a quick visit and get back to her work. But she admits she's occasionally had suicidal ideation. but it's not like something that's happened to her at, you know, right at the current moment. She's not suicidal at the moment. Nonetheless, the lady she talks to decides that because of that conversation, she needs to be admitted for 24 hours observance. And suddenly, as she's about to leave, she's walking out, they call her back and she gets taken in, told that she'll be there for 24 hours. Of course, she's stunned and upset about it. She's wondering what's going on, and asked to make a call. They allowed her to make a call. She calls 911. The police tell her she's being held against her will. They come, but see that she signed a form. And so it turns out that this for-profit psychiatric place, you know, whenever they're able to, they'll try to admit somebody to make money. She doesn't understand this, so she gets in arguments. There's some parts of this that are pretty unrealistic. Like, they put her in a co-ed room with adult male and female patients. Nobody's tied down. And they sleep in there and everything else. It's like they would never do that, as far as I know. Put them together, and if they're mentally disturbed, even if they're not, you know, in this day and age, would they be allowed co-ed in a room together at night with nobody observing? Seems crazy to me. But in this room, so she gets in fights with this girl, and that causes her to stay longer because she gets in fights. So now she's there for 7 days. Turns out there's a guy in the room, a black guy, another patient, or so she thought. Turns out he is actually an undercover journalist. And he has a phone, and he's taking notes, and he's trying to document some of the allegations that there's been, that they're putting people in there against their will without valid reasons, just for money. And meanwhile, the stalker finds out where she is, and he ends up getting a job there at the psychiatric hospital. And obviously that even disturbs her more. And they think she's crazy. This guy's changed his name. I don't know how he could hide everything about himself, but they said they did a background check, and there's no record of him being anybody else than this guy named George Shaw. His name back in Boston was David Strine. And little by little, he starts doing things because she has to take meds every day, and he's there to distribute the meds. One day, he sticks a different pill in her cup and causes her to have some kind of psychotic episode or something. Then near the end, she starts using her this journalist's phone secretly. Nobody knows he has a phone because they think he's a patient. And he's pretty nice to her, and they become friends. And he informs her. He doesn't tell her that he's a journalist, but he tells her what's going on. But the stalker observes them together, and he starts to get angry about it. And one day he attacks the guy in the restroom, takes him down into the basement and drugs him, and eventually actually kills him. So the journalist dies in there. Meanwhile, she's not even aware of this yet, other than that she disappears. And meanwhile, her mom shows up because she's able to use this guy's phone, and calls her mom, and her mom shows up, planning to help get her out. her mom stays at a hotel nearby, and that same night, the stalker finds her mom at the hotel. We don't know what happened, but her mom disappears. Never comes back to see her daughter. Finally, the stalker gets the girl, this girl of his dreams. He thinks that she's the picture perfect person, and they finally get in this padded room together where she had been put. And actually, he tells her the hospital thinks she's already been discharged, so only he knows that she's there. And so the story goes, I mean, it's really no sense in telling the whole story, but things happen at the end, action packed, and it's pretty. Some of the things are pretty crazy. The mom ends up. She finds her mom dead. She ends up in the trunk of this guy's car. The stalker was taking her to New Hampshire to her cabin up there. What's the big takeaway? She does finally get away, by the way, and the cops find out what happened, and everything gets resolved, even though two people are dead from it. And she goes back to her job. They show her 6 months later back on the job, and that's about the end of it. So what do we do for Christians? See, the thing that I found interesting about this is that I worked in a psychiatric hospital for over a year after I went to college as a psychology major, so I wanted to get that kind of psychiatric experience. I'm thinking I might go on and become a psychologist, But this was a Christian hospital, and it's, higher, very ethical. And, I mean, it's mostly. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not, but I'm saying very good, well-respected psychiatric hospital. Although once in a while I did see things that I didn't like, but nothing like, you know, illegal or anything like that. Just things that I thought there could be more care for the patients. And that's a topic of my heart that I grew up with, because my dad also worked as a chaplain at a psychiatric hospital at that same place. And so he taught us to care for people with, emotional, mental issues. And then there were also not just the types of patients with the mental issues that came in for a month or 6 months or whatever. That back then they had much longer insurance holds. They could take them for a longer time. But there were also developmentally disabled at this hospital as well. And so we learned to care for these types. And that's the takeaway I get. I mean, I can only think of the psychiatric aspect. Of course, there's the stalking aspect. There's victims of stalking that we need to be aware of these things and try to have some awareness and knowledge and education and be able to, show some empathy with others about it, not say, oh, that never happened to me, but try to learn about these things, because people can become victims. I'm losing my voice, I think, so I might have to cut this short and finish the rest in the box below. And so I guess I'll just try to encourage my fellow Christians to have compassion for the mentally ill, compassion for victims of stalking. For those who become stalkers, try to be able to aware of what kind of personalities they have, and if they come from somebody's family, you got to recognize they could come from yours someday. You never know, so be aware of those kind of things. What kind of makes people compulsive, obsessive like that, and become aware of these things. A little psychiatric knowledge is good for us as Christians to be aware of that, but not to become obsessed with it. God be with you and all. Keep telling the good news. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.